Okay, so in this lecture, I'm going to talk a little bit about scheduling and then also the concept of winning at all costs, because what we're trying to do is kind of give you some logistical things for coaching, but then also look at some of the psychological aspects of things that you're going to be dealing with if you choose to go into that profession. In regards to scheduling, so you guys are going to have a scheduling assignment, and basically some of the things that I want you to think about are going to be, first of all, you have to schedule who you have to schedule. So you guys are going to have to look up, like if you're wanting to coach in college and in a certain conference, maybe you play each team 2 times. So when I coached volleyball at the college in Indiana, we basically had a certain number of teams in our conference region that we had to play. We only had to play them once, but typically we would play them home and away, especially if it wasn't too far to travel, because once you get into college, sometimes your travel distances are very far. And then after that, it's kind of up to you who you choose to put on the schedule. So my personal philosophy was I wanted to play competitive teams, because in my conference, those teams were not very competitive, and we could walk in and play a volleyball match, and it was a struggle for the other team to even get the ball over the net. Well, if I'm looking postseason, that's not going to help me get better. That's not going to help me or my team prepare to be able to compete at a high level if we're not ever playing high level. But some of the things that you have to take into consideration, my second year, I took them to a tournament in Florida, and I knew it was a Division II tournament. And the college I was at was Division II, but we were a Christian branch, and our playoffs was specifically in what we call the NCCAA, and so it was a Christian kind of branch of only certain schools that were in this Christian affiliation could play in there. So there were some D2 schools, a lot of NAIA schools, some D3 schools. And so my school was so small as a college that there was no way I was going to get the caliber of player that most Division IIs were getting. So it was nice because I had the scholarship opportunities the same as those Division II schools, but competitively, nobody wanted to come to Oakland City, Indiana. So I had to find the right kind of players. So in regards to the schedule, I wanted tough competition to prepare us for the end of the season. And so I took us to a tournament in Florida against big Division II schools, knowing that we would probably not come home with a win. And sometimes you have to think about those things, because it can be tricky, because if you go into those situations, and especially if you do a lot of that in the beginning of the season, losing consistently can be demoralizing. So that's where kind of the psychological aspect comes in. What is the balance of making sure you can be competitive, but also maintain, the proper mentality of your team? And so what I would try to do is make sure I scheduled at least 1 or 2 right in the beginning that I thought were for sure wins. And my tournaments, I would always try to make competitive, because, again, like I said, my in-conference play I knew was going to be weak. And then the little matches that I would try to pick up, I would try to pick up competitive matches, some that I knew we were probably definitely going to win, some that I thought, we're probably not going to win this, but I want to get that experience. And then I would try to make sure I scheduled some teams who were going to be very similar to what we were going to see at the end of the season. So there's a lot that goes into that. The other thing I want you to think about is particular matches and when do you schedule them. So something like a senior night. I've had a lot of experiences with this where, you want it to be a good match because it's your senior night and you've got all these people coming, but you also want to give your seniors the opportunity to win, and more than likely win, because it's their senior match and typically it's their last match at home. So I want you to kind of think about all those things going into preparing your schedule. And once you prepare your schedule, you're just going to have to kind of talk about some of that a little bit and say, like, why did you pick this? And what do you think the benefit of, playing this particular match is, or game, or I say match a lot because of volleyball, but whatever sport you're doing, okay? The other thing that you guys are doing this week is talking a little bit about the concept of winning at all costs. And you can talk about that at any level. And so I want you to kind of think about it from all levels. So as a coach, you could be coaching rec league 4-year-old soccer, okay, all the way up to, I said we're not really going to talk too much about professional in here because that's kind of a whole different ball game. But let's say you go up to collegiate coaching. You're going to have to decide what your philosophy is on winning and at what cost. So, at what point do you stop playing everybody? At what point do you, not give equal playing time? At what point do you bench a player for discipline reasons, even if it means you lose? You have to have a good idea of what that means for you when you go into coach a particular team. Because the idea is, or what you have to understand is, whatever you start out with, you're not going to be able, it's going to be very difficult to make anything more strict or implement rules that haven't been implemented in the past. But if you start with that mentality and those rules and you follow them, you can always kind of adjust them later on. So for something like a player gets in trouble, what is your policy? Do you bench them? Do they have to do a certain amount of running before they're able to play again? And whatever it is you decide, make sure you stick to that. And there's all kinds of things that when you talk about winning at all costs that can go into that. There's, the parent mentality of it. What are parents doing with their kids today? And what are they teaching them? And are they teaching them that, all that matters is winning? Or are they teaching them that, so much of what is important in sports is the process and what you're learning, and learning how to be responsible, and learning how to be a good teammate, and managing time, and all these things that come along with sports? Or are we just saying, win, win, win? Think about it. Most of you are probably athletes. Maybe not, but at some point you've probably played some type of sport. How did your parents address you afterwards? What was the first question they asked you? Think about how often the first question that somebody asks you after a match, a game, whatever, is, did you win? Okay, so as a society, we push that concept. Parents push that concept. Coaches push that concept. And we have to be really careful that we don't get so wrapped up in winning that we lose sight of some of these other things that are supposed to be important in sports. And especially with young children, because if you start doing that with 4 and 5 and 6-year-olds, they come home and you're talking to a 5-year-old. Did you win? How many goals did you score? Maybe it needs to be more, what did you learn today? How did you interact with your teammates today? Something that can help kind of balance this win-win-win. Because now we're getting into situations where we've got, again, people doing things that they shouldn't be doing, but they're still playing because they're a good player. We've got people using performance enhancement drugs, which we'll get into the very end of the later on in the course. Okay, why? Got to be the best. Got to win. Some of that's a little bit more like them trying to better themselves as well. But ultimately, it's a lot about, I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. Especially when you talk in like individual sports and the doping and the drug use, because in individual sports, that's 100% what it's about. I have to be the best. I have to win. So I'm going to do this. And so you guys are going to watch some things and kind of discuss that And hopefully within you guys' discussion and some of the things I've brought up, maybe you'll be able to develop a good sense of, how do you feel about that concept and what are your limitations in regards to winning at all costs.